So is encryption ethically required? Well, you're going to find people who will absolutely say no, people who will say absolutely yes, and some people are going to be in the middle. What you're finding most of the legal ethicists say today is that encryption should be used where appropriate, but we are inching closer to it being required. And the data breach notification laws, which I'll reference later, they also encourage encryption because in all the states except Tennessee, if your data
Just
is
recently, Tennessee.
just recently, Tennessee, which published a silly new law where encrypted data has to be reported when it has been compromised. But for all the other states, if your data is encrypted, you do not have to report to the state attorney generals or anyone else. So that is high motivation indeed to make sure you are encrypting things. So in actual usage, what do people do? Well, we find that there are some people who use encryption all the time, some people who never use it, and some people who use it sometimes. The correct answer there is sometimes because it is where appropriate. If you're just scheduling a meeting with your client, do you need to worry about encryption? No, of course not. But if you're transmitting sensitive data, then of course it is something you should worry about. So we have had people, and this is from the ABA, they've talked about the fact that experts are revisiting the topic of encryption and suggesting that in some circumstances, encryption or other safeguards for certain email communications may be required. Now, you're never going to find the formula for Coca-Cola being transmitted over email. That's just not happening. But if it were, you can be guaranteed it would be encrypted. It's the only way they would send it. The other thing is lost and stolen devices are a huge problem. So encryption makes it a no-brainer solution because if you lose it and the data is encrypted, all the thief has is garbage. They can't decrypt that data. And for all the myths that everybody can decrypt data, it isn't true. So, what you really want to do is encrypt it so if you lose it, you don't have to worry about the data being protected. And that falls within competence and reasonable efforts to secure data. So it falls within model rules 1.1 and 1.6. So sometimes people ask us what's reasonable. Any kind of mobile device certainly needs to be encrypted. Data breach notification laws exist in 47 states and the District of Columbia, so almost everybody's got one, and the penalties can be severe. I'm not familiar with DC and Maryland, but in Virginia, the penalty for failing to comply is $150,000. That's not chump change. So you do want to make sure that you're taking rational precautions so that you don't get a fine like that. So in 2007, I'm sorry, we had 18 laptops stolen from the offices of a law firm in Orlando, but you notice that they were encrypted. They had done the right thing. And this was some time back. So the laptops were stolen, but the data was encrypted, therefore protected. So it should not be noteworthy and did not have to be reported. We need encryption because electronic communications, as we all know, can be intercepted. It's the old postcard thing. I don't know if we do that later in this thing or not. I mean, they say that an email traveling along its route, it's not like a postcard. Anybody can read it. Worse yet, it's like a postcard written in pencil because anybody can change it. So if you know what you're doing, it's very easy to manipulate these things and to intercept them. If you're crazy enough to go into a Starbucks and use their wireless to do work or financial stuff, shame on you. Shame on you. You cannot protect your data from being intercepted there.
Your own Wi-Fi is secure as long as you've configured it properly. And that's actually one of the best practices is that you use your own hotspot as opposed to jumping on any free wireless or open wireless. Your hotspot should be configured to have secure wireless encryption that you're connected to. The connection from your phone, whether it's tethered or not, or a hotspot, is encrypted back to the carrier.
Encryption is fundamentally a process that protects data. It takes readable data and it turns it into unreadable data. So in order to make this unreadable data readable again, you need a decryption key. You've encrypted it, now you've got to decrypt it. So when it is unreadable, they call that ciphertext. You don't have to remember it, there's no quiz, but ciphertext is what it's called. And then this is just sort of a graphical representation. You have the readable plain text, you apply the encryption key, you get the unreadable ciphertext, apply the decryption key, and you get the readable plain text back again. That's what's happening under the covers. You don't really have to know it. You just have to sort of know that that's the fundamental of it.
We'll talk a little bit about the simplified way of encryption that's there. You've got these three elements. You have an encryption program. You have an algorithm, because not all encryption is created equal. They use different algorithms for it. And then there's a key. So bottom line, you've really got three pieces when we're talking about encryption.
We have contracts. Many of you have had to sign HIPAA business associate agreements, and they require you to do encryption. There may be statutes and regulations, almost too many to name, all the health regulations, the financial regulations. There are lots of laws and regulations, so you have to know what kind of data you hold and know whether it's subject to encryptions or encryption or penalties for not encrypting it. The ABA Ethics 2020 amendments, Rule 1.1 competence was changed to say that you have to keep abreast of changes in law and technology, including the benefits and the risks associated with relevant technology. Now, this has been adopted not only by the ABA, but it's been adopted by 20 of the states. It has recently been adopted by Virginia effective March 1st. I'll leave the rest of you to figure out your own jurisdictions.
You can go to the ABA, the LTRC website.
The ABA. Yeah, the ABA's Legal Technology Resource Center. That site will tell you whether it's been adopted in your jurisdiction. It also included the adoption of a change to 1.6, saying that you must make reasonable efforts to prevent inadvertent disclosure of sensitive data representing to the related to the representation of a client. No state has mandated encryption. Absolutely none. ABA has not mandated encryption. But all the way back to 2006, states have started talking about it. The closest one to talking about it in a way that looks like we're inching forward is Texas. That's the most recent one. And they suggested that encryption should be employed where appropriate. That's basically where they came down. I think that you're going to see more and more ethics opinions as especially since all these law firm data breaches are now about to be displayed on banner headlines. I think you're going to find the encryption wagon is going to move out of the train a lot faster. You want, of course, to protect the decryption key. That's very important. So you want to use a strong password or a passphrase. 14 characters or more is the current security standard. That's what people are recommending. That means upper and lowercase letters. It means special characters. It means using numbers. And if you use individual words, all the individual words in the dictionary have been indexed in something colorfully known as the rainbow tables by cyber criminals. So they know all of those words. Now, if you take the spaces out and mash them up together, well, that they don't know. So mashing words together can be very effective as long as you still have upper lowercase numbers and special characters.
There are three methods in which to encrypt wireless networks: WEP, WPA, and WPA2. The first two have already been cracked. So don't bother.
Don't use them.
Don't use them.
Make sure you're not using them at home.
Any encryption that you use on a Wi-Fi should be WPA2. Now, when you're configuring your hotspot in your phone, you have that option. Make sure it says WPA2 for your hotspot. So VPN, Virtual Private Network, is an encrypted channel, communication channel. Typically, you're going to have a VPN client on your laptop, whatever, and then it's going to go through the internet and then through your firewall, connecting up to what's called a VPN concentrator. That's there. So this gets you end-to-end encryption across that tunnel. So some of the safeguards, additional safeguards when we're talking about encryption, you need to make sure that your data is backed up. Encryption is just like your car that you drive. At some point, it's going to break. So that hard drive, if it's encrypted and the hard drive fails and you haven't backed the data up, you're toast. There's no way you're going to get that data. So backing up data in multiple locations is very important when we're talking about encryption. Now, they can be encrypted here, encrypted here, encrypted here. That's fine, but multiples. And that's to try to mitigate any hardware failures, hardware and or software failure. The recovery key, Sharon talked about that. We need to make sure that that's backed up as well. And that has to do primarily with operating systems where you have the recovery key for implementing encryption. I'm going to talk about some of that too in a little bit. Enterprise management. If you're doing multiple devices and you're trying to control everyone from a centralized console, you want to consider using enterprise management, because what this gives you is you can enforce encryption on devices. So as an example, you can have a policy in these systems that says if somebody takes a USB stick and connects it up to a computer, it better be encrypted. And if it's not, we're going to encrypt it. And so the thing will pop up and say, nope, you can't do this. It's not encrypted. We're going to encrypt it now. And it'll automatically enforce that. That's what some of these enterprise management things do. The other thing that it offers is that if you get a disgruntled employee or somebody that forgets what their passphrase is, since it's centrally managed, there's an administrative access where you can go in and reset. So you're not toast, you can recover from it. When we're talking about laptops, computers themselves, laptops and desktops, servers too, I'm a big fan of full disk encryption. That means the entire drive. And the reason for that is if you forget, it doesn't matter. As long as you put stuff on that disk, it's protected. Now you have the option of doing a partition or a folder, the My Documents folder, or a particular file or something like that. But if you forget to put the data there, you're at risk. Full disk encryption is so much better to do. Be done with it. Off you go. If you're using external drives, external USB drives as an example, you can get hardware, full disk encryption. And these are just some samples up there. There's several other manufacturers that make them too. What happens here is that when you plug it in and you power it up, it then prompts you for the decryption passphrase. You enter that passphrase in. It then decrypts the contents of the drive so that you can use it and copy things and do whatever. And then when you disconnect and power it down, the hardware encrypts it automatically. Operating systems as well. Solo and small firms love this because they love free. Windows. BitLocker is included, free in Windows 10. If you're running a Surface Pro as an example, you'll have BitLocker that you can use. If you're a Mac user, OS X has FileVault 2 actually, depending on the version that you're running. Now the key point here when you're talking about encryption at the operating system level is it's free, it's included, but it's not on by default. You have to enable it. And it's simple. You just check a little box, put in your passphrase, you're good to go.